On today's show, the first big trade of the offseason was made over the weekend. It didn't involve the Cavs, but it says something about the Cavs. We're going to talk about that next right here on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, $200 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. On Sunday, the Orlando Magic made the first big trade of the offseason, and really the offseason isn't here because if you look at your calendar, it is Monday, June 16th, and the NBA Finals Game 5 is tonight between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. So there still is basketball, but we are getting offseason moves. And this was, of course, a big move for a lot of different reasons, but I do think this is a move that impacts the Cavs in a couple of different ways. And way number one, I see this, and I will talk about this in a little bit at length coming up in segment number 2, but the Orlando Magic are going for it. Now, they're going for it in part because they think the Eastern Conference is wide open. And part of that is because the Cavs could not go out there and prove this postseason that they are the team to beat. Now, we will have a conversation about whether or not they are the team to beat in a little bit, but that is something that I think Orlando thinks because the Cavs haven't proven it in the postseason. They've not gone on the deep playoff run that we all anticipated they would this spring. I do think, fair or not, I'm not saying I believe this, but I think there are going to be teams out there that think Indiana's run to the NBA Finals was a fluke this summer. I think there will be teams that have that thought process. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I think that will be the thought process of some teams, or they'll see what the Pacers did and said, we can replicate that in our own way. We don't need to be the most talented team in the world because, let's face it, there are teams in the Eastern Conference that are more talented than the Indiana Pacers. I also think that you look at this from an Eastern Conference standpoint and you say, well, are we scared of the Knicks? No, probably not. Boston's not going to be great next year. They'll be fine, but they're not going to be a championship caliber team with no Jason Tatum. Who knows what moves they make this offseason. The Milwaukee Bucks, whether or not if they have Giannis, great, they'll be the 6th seed. If not, they're going to be really bad. The Detroit Pistons should be better next year, but I don't think anyone's going to take them as championship contenders. So Orlando is going for this. And I think part of their reason for going for it is because they don't view anybody in the East, and this includes the Cavs, as a terrorizing team. They don't view anybody in the East as unbeatable. And I don't know that the Cavs' playoff failures this year would have pushed Orlando to not do this or to do something different. Like, I don't know that that's part of their thinking, but I do think part of their thinking is the East is wide open and there is an opportunity that we as an organization can try and take advantage of. That said, I do look at this through a Cavs prism. How do the Magic now match up with the Cavs? Because Desmond Bain is a very good player. He's not an all-star caliber player. He was not an all-star in the West. And of course, it's more difficult to make the all-star team in the West. But I don't think he's going to be an all-star in the Eastern Conference either. And Orlando is a very good team. And despite the fact that the Magic finished with the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference this year, I believe that a lot of that you can look at that and say, not as if the Magic were some championship contender that was hiding in plain sight, going 41-41, but I do think a significant amount of that can be explained by their injuries, where they didn't have Paolo Banchero for a long stretch of the season. They didn't have Franz Wagner for a long stretch of the season. Both of those guys dealt with oblique injuries. They didn't have Jalen Suggs for the back half of the season because of a knee injury. You can explain them being 500 by the fact that they were injured for a large chunk of this season. And in reality, they're probably closer to a 50, 51, 52 type of win team. They're a talented team. They're a very good defensive team. They finished near the top of the league in defense this year. I believe they had the number 2 defense in all of basketball this season, only behind Oklahoma City. And Desmond Bain is a good defender. I don't know that he's going to necessarily help them get a ton better on that end, but I don't think they needed to get a ton better on that end. The Orlando Magic's problem was offense. And this is where I think that this relates to a matchup with the Cavs, because we all want to look at what happened a couple of years ago in that playoff series against Orlando when the Magic took the Cavs to 7 games. And that Cavs team, I do think, was much more talented than Orlando was. They just didn't necessarily play like it in that postseason series. And the Magic, give them credit, they rose up and they did a great job in that series of fighting and pushing the Cavs to the brink. That said, Orlando offensively is a disaster. They, this season, finished 27th in offensive rating. They have not been a top 20, not even saying like good. Top 20 is the not being bottom third in the NBA. They've not had an offense not be bottom third in the NBA since Dwight Howard was in town. So that's a really long time. And in order for them to be a team that I think is at the same level of the Cavs and the Pacers and the Celtics, maybe not the Celtics next year because of the injury aspect of things and just maybe being a gap year, and even the Knicks, Orlando looks at this and says, we need to be much better offensively. And they do. Like, I don't think that it didn't take some outside firm to do a study of the organization and said, you know what, I think you guys would be better if you could put the ball in the basket more. And Desmond Bain can certainly do some of that. But as I look at how they match up with the Cavs, the same question keeps popping into my mind. Who's going to play point guard for that team? And it's not Desmond Bain. I don't think Jalen Suggs is a very good offensive point guard. I don't think he's somebody that's necessarily going to be breaking down the defense. Paolo Banchero is a great offensive player, but he's not a point guard. Neither is Franz Wagner. This is a team that if they make a move that gets them a point guard and puts them in a different position, I think this Desmond Bain trade could be something that vaults them up to the Cavs level. But unless they do that, I have a really difficult time seeing how they're going to be a team that goes on a very deep playoff run. And you might say, well, the offseason really hasn't even started. So I would expect them to be able to go out and get a point guard. And you could be right about that. But my thing here is, and this is really where it does connect to the Cavs, because we heard, I don't know if rumblings is the right word. I think we heard speculation that maybe Darius Garland could be traded to the Orlando Magic. And again, I do not think the Cavs are going to trade Darius Garland. I do not think they would ever trade him to the Orlando Magic, a team in the Cavs conference that is trying to gear up to beat them. But we heard that because of how desperately Orlando needs a point guard. They need somebody that can be the table setter. They need somebody that can not only create for themselves, which Orlando's got guys that can do that, but they need somebody that can create for others. And this trade, what I do think this does is if Darius Garland were to be traded, were to be shopped around, this deal takes the Magic out of this sweepstakes. Because if you see what they just paid for Desmond Bain, and we'll talk about this coming up a little bit later on, but if you see what the cost for Desmond Bain was, and this is not a thing where Desmond Bain himself is worth 4 first-round picks. From the people I have talked to across the league so far that really don't, not Cavs people, not Magic, not Grizzlies, not connected to this trade at all, but KCP was not viewed as a positive asset. I do think that we are at the point now, looking at this trade, where one of those first-round picks, and of course, not all unprotected first-round picks are created equal. I thought the framing of this deal was a little interesting because they said 4 first-round picks. Well, one of them is number 16 in the draft in a couple of weeks. It's not exactly an unprotected first-round pick. That's just number 16. But one of those picks, you kind of have to say, okay, that is what Memphis is getting for taking on KCP. And then you could maybe say 3 first-round picks plus Cole Anthony for Desmond Bain. Now, I am personally, and I think most of you listening should be of this opinion, that Darius Garland is a better basketball player than Desmond Bain. And I don't think it is a particularly close debate. So if that is what Desmond Bain is going for, what exactly would it take to trade for Darius Garland? What would it take? What will it take potentially to trade for Jared Allen. I don't know if this necessarily changes that price, considering the positional value that Allen has. That Bane certainly has far more than a center in Allen, regardless of how good the individual player is. Bane plays a much more valuable position. But it does get me wondering, what exactly are the costs of these deals going to be, and how does this affect the Cavs? I think the Magic got better. I don't think they're at the Cavs level. And until they get a point guard, maybe it'll be somebody good. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to go about trading for somebody like that. I have a tough time seeing how they're going to be a team that really starts to play in Cleveland's ballpark in terms of talent level. Not to say they're not going to be very good. I think the Magic will be really good. But if we've learned anything in the postseason, certainly with the Cavs loss to the Pacers, is that you need guys that can run the offense. You really need guys that can run the offense, that can handle business on that end of the floor. The Magic have a lot of guys that can do it for themselves. I don't know if they have a lot of guys that can do it for everybody. And until you have a lot of guys that can do it for everybody, I don't know how successful you're going to be. This makes the Magic better. I don't think that this makes them a serious threat to the Cavs. Now, where should we be looking at the Cavs in terms of Eastern Conference contenders before the offseason really gets here? Well, FanDuel has put out some odds for who's going to win the NBA Finals, not right now, 1 year from now. I'll tell you where the Cavs are, and we're going to talk about why it's a good thing next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track of all that cash. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place. You can stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan for some of those long-term goals that I know you have. Plus, it's very easy to collaborate with somebody, because managing money with your partner can be a stressful endeavor, but Monarch Money makes it smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that typically comes along with doing something like that. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA on monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON, NBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. This Orlando Magic trade got me, and I think a lot of other people, thinking about, well, what does next postseason look like? And of course, this postseason's still going on. There's the NBA Finals happening, where Game 5 is tonight. We don't know who's going to win that, but a lot of eyes are now looking forward to next season. And of course, our friends at FanDuel have now put out odds for who's going to win the finals. Not this year. They have odds on that. It's Oklahoma City, very heavy favorite, despite the series tied at 2 games apiece. But who's going to win the finals 1 year from now? And Oklahoma City is a heavy favorite. They're plus 220. But a lot of the conversation, well, what does this trade acquiring Desmond Bain make it look like for the rest of the Eastern Conference? What does this make the Orlando Magic look like? And I think those are very fair questions to ask, as I essentially talk about how this trade impacts the Cavs in one way or another. And I went to FanDuel and I wanted to see what exactly these odds were like. As I mentioned, OKC, a plus 220 favorite to hoist the Larry O'Brien trophy next year. The Cavs have the second best odds in the NBA. The Cavs championship odds, and I did want to do this, maybe I wasn't planning on doing this today until the Bane trade happened, but I did want to do this before the moving and shaking started, just because I think this will be a good thing to track as the offseason rolls along. I imagine these odds will change frequently. I don't know that the order will change all that frequently, although as we see some trades, free agent signings, things of that nature, I suspect we will see some shifting in odds, if you will. But the Cavs have the best odds in the Eastern Conference. They are, I know I talked about this on, I don't remember if it was Thursday or Friday show with Matt Fontana, but if you missed either of those, go back and listen to both of them. But we talked a little bit about who is going to be the favorite to win the Eastern Conference next year. And he mentioned Indy, he mentioned maybe New York being ahead of the Cavs. And I not to just say I was right, but I thought that the Cavs would be the favorites. And I think I have conveyed that on a number of different podcasts that I've done. And checking out FanDuel and seeing that while they're not some heavy favorite, the Cavs are plus 850 to win the finals. And the New York Knicks have the third best odds in basketball, the second best odds in the Eastern Conference to win the finals at plus 950. I found that to be interesting that they were ahead of the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers had the third best odds in the East at plus 1200. They were followed in the Eastern Conference by the Boston Celtics at plus 1400. And then finally, the Orlando Magic at plus 1600. So what this tells me is a number of different things. But for the Cavs specifically, I don't think that this Cavs team is as far away as it may have felt like at certain points this spring. I think Darius Garland's injury was pretty impactful. I think the Cavs picked a bad time to forget how to shoot the basketball from beyond the arc. I think the Indiana Pacers have gone on a legendary run through the postseason, and they deserve all the credit in the world for that happening. But I do think as we look at what this future looks like, and despite the fact that the Cavs underachieved, teams are still chasing them. Now, everybody is going to be chasing Oklahoma City because I imagine they're going to win 2 of the next 3 games against the Indiana Pacers. Everybody's chasing them. But despite the fact that the Cavs lost in 5 games in the second round, teams in the East are not going to be chasing the Pacers. Teams in the East are going to be chasing the Cavs. Whether that's fair or not, I'm not here to say. It probably isn't. The Pacers deserve more credit, but that's not for me to decide. As I mentioned in the first segment, I don't think teams across the league are going to look at the Pacers, despite the fact that they've gone to at least the conference finals 2 years in a row, went to the NBA finals this year and took it to at least 6 games. I don't think teams are going to view them as some unbeatable juggernaut. I don't think teams view the Cavs that way. I don't think they should view the Cavs that way. And while I think the Pacers deserve a lot of respect, I don't think they should be viewed as some dynasty in the making. And certainly I don't think anyone should feel that way about the New York Knicks. I've talked about what Boston has going on. And the Magic made this big move. And it is interesting to me that it is a move that is in part chasing the Cavs, but it also doesn't put them any closer than 5th. Like, I don't think that this is a trade that makes the Orlando Magic championship contenders. Now, as I said, these odds will shift. They will move. They will go up. They will go down. It will be an interesting offseason. You'll see some teams move up as big trades are made. Like, for instance, the Houston Rockets have the 6th best odds to win the finals next year. They are plus 1,300. I think there's some Kevin Durant baked into that. If Kevin Durant gets traded to another team, say San Antonio or Miami, I think you'll see Houston drop a little bit, even though they didn't do anything. So these things will be affected by different things. And I wish I had seen these odds prior to the Orlando Magic Desmond Bain trade, and I had not, to know if the Cavs had moved at all. But I do think it's pretty telling that FanDuel thinks the Cavs are the best team in the East before this offseason starts. Now, there's a long time before they play real basketball games that matter, but I do think it is a good reminder of just where this Cavs team is. It's not to say that they're perfect. They need to get better because there is a sizable gap between Oklahoma City at plus 220 and the Cavs at plus 850. That is essentially the same gap between the Cavs and the Magic. It's a big gap, but you'd rather be where the Cavs are than where anybody else in the East is right now. The Cavs are trying to make moves. I have heard a few things. I will tell you what I've heard and what I think is going to happen as the moving and shaking of the offseason for the Cleveland Cavaliers grows near. That's next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, so much more. Whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action with FanDuel, because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have so many ways, more ways than ever, really, to play smart, win big, and get in on the action. The action didn't go so well for me this weekend. You may have heard there was a pretty important, maybe even I would call it big golf tournament. I think it's fair to say a major golf tournament in terms of just size that happened this weekend in a nearby state. And I maybe had a wager or two on it, and maybe potentially a wager or two that I had on it didn't go so well. Did not pick the winner. I picked 3 different guys to win. None of them won. I had an 8-leg parlay for all 8 guys to make the cut. 7 of them did, and a certain somebody that creates a lot of YouTube content in the golf game did not make the cut, and that cost me. I had a 4-leg parlay of guys to finish in the top 10, and again, a certain YouTuber wasn't around for the weekend, so that didn't hit either. Well, I had a rough weekend on FanDuel. You can have a great weekend or week ahead even on FanDuel, because if you are new to FanDuel, and this is important, listen up. If you're new to FanDuel, now is the perfect time to sign up, because if you head to FanDuel.com, that is FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets. Again, just need that first $5 bet to win. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The Cavs are going to try and make some moves this summer. I know that it has been reported elsewhere, I believe a couple of different places, that the Cavs are looking to trade Isaac Okoro. That is something that I have heard similarly, that they are trying to find a landing spot to him, essentially to unload that salary. If you do the math here, Isaac Okoro was making $11 million per year. That is what I imagine Ty Jerome is roughly going to be making. Not saying it's going to be exactly $11 million a year, but I think Ty is going to be in that ballpark. And I think if the Cavs are able to find somebody that would like to have Isaac Okoro on the roster, it greatly increases the chance that Ty Jerome is back in Cleveland. It doesn't mean it's some sure thing that if Isaac Okoro is gone, Ty stays, or even if Ty could be back either way. But I think that financial cut greatly increases the chance. I do think, while I do not believe, and nothing I have heard leads me to believe, that Darius Garland will be traded, I do think that other starters, maybe Jared Allen, maybe Max Strus, maybe some other key players, are guys that the Cavs are listening on at the very least. I think the Cavs are not in a position to where they are thinking that they're just good enough right now, that they're too good to look around and see what's out there. It's not to say that they're going to make a big trade. I have no idea. There's a lot that needs to be unpacked. There's a lot that would potentially need to go into it. But I do think that the Cavs are attacking this offseason, and I think it's very important that they do so. I think the Cavs are attacking this offseason in a way that makes it so they know they need to get better. At least that is what I have gathered from talking to people across the league, is that the Cavs are in a position to where they're not content with where they're at. They know they came up short, and I do think that changes need to be made. I have personally expressed that a number of different times, and what I have heard leads me to believe that the Cavs are willing to make changes. I don't know how big those changes are going to be. I think some of them might be small. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to retain Ty Jerome. I know they would like to. I don't know if they're going to be able to retain Sam Merrill or not. I don't know what Sam's market is going to be. I think if he is back on a similar contract to what he had, if he's around a minimum, and I tend to think that when you are sort of Sam's age, where he's near 30 years old, and you've only ever been a minimum contract guy, you're probably going to continue to be that. And if Sam continues to be that, I think being back in Cleveland would be a really good fit for him, but we will have to wait and see what happens. Free agency, of course, doesn't get here for another few weeks. The NBA draft is upcoming. I am going to start to do a little bit of draft content coming up. Of course, the Cavs have 2 second-round picks. It's not as if they have a major pick. I don't think that there's anybody with the 48th pick that you would expect to come in and make a big impact next year, but there are certainly things to take a look at as that grows near, as trades grow near, as free agency grows near. All of it is quickly approaching, and I will have you covered right here on Locked On Cavs. So thank you again for making this your first listen today and every single day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, anywhere, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave the show a nice review. It helps grow the show. It's really helpful. I do appreciate everyone who does it. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, let them know you like the show. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And I will be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.